Welcome to the Leader's Pause, where leaders like you tune in to find calm, get clear, and level up. Tune in with best-selling author, speaker, and coach Hal Runkel as he helps you take back your time, your energy, and your decision-making power. All you have to do is learn to press your own pause button first. So, take a break, take a breath, take a knee, and learn to access your greatest human superpower, the ability to pause, think, and decide for yourself. It's time to find calm, get clear, and level up. The Leader's Pause starts now.
Welcome to the Leader's Pause. I am Hal Runkel, your host, and I'm an author and a speaker. And the great thing I do is I get to help executives unearth the conflict that's embedded within their organization and actually learn to appreciate that conflict as the exact thing they need in order to grow. So I get to coach leaders. And my main emphasis, if you ask me why I do what I do, it's because I love grown-ups. I love helping people be more grown up in their role because I think you agree with me. That's what the world needs most. More grown-ups in charge. That is the why of why I get up in the morning. That is why of what I do professionally. And it starts obviously with me calling myself to more and more grown-uphood, if you will, whatever that may look like. But I would ask you to consider whether or not you think there are more or less grown-ups now than there used to be. The reality is aging is inevitable. Adulthood, yeah, that's up to us. It's a choice. And while, I love all the jokes about adulting, and it kind of happened, all that stuff came out as my kids were becoming adults. And my kids are now 27 and 25, and so they're not kids. They are adults. And so much of what governed our parenting journey led to me writing books about parenting was I wanted them to grow up into grown-ups. And I want myself to continually grow up into grown-ups. But more than anything, I want people in positions of leadership to grow up into being grown-ups. Because I see that as the remedy for everything we're struggling with is let's dive deep and let's double down on the one thing that makes us more unique than any other living being on this planet. What makes us more unique is the ability to reason and begin to have an influence on our own emotional states and then make choices based on forecasting what might be the result of this particular action in the short term and the long term. All of those are skills that can only come from a highly developed advanced brain like we have. What I struggle with so much is watching us kind of dumb down everything in order to reduce us to the easiest, simplest formulas that explain everything, that give us exactly what we're supposed to do, answer all of our problems all at once. And then we try something because we saw it on some social media thing, a short that lasted 5 seconds, and now that is it. That's not grown-uphood. Grown-uphood, to invent a term as opposed to adulthood. And by the way, the reason why I struggle with the word adult is because it's a confusing term. Like think about this. What's the word we use to describe cheating on your spouse? Adultery. Now, we can look at it etymologically and see that adultery is a different root word than adult, but it is fascinating. It sounds exactly the same to us. And to adulterate something actually means to spoil it, to ruin something. And that's why we say adulteration, adultery in a marriage is violating the monogamous covenant you supposedly said yes to. That's confusing because adultery is not the pinnacle of adult behavior. It's deceptive. It's teenage behavior. It's toddler behavior. So adulthood is not the term. And I even used it in one of my books, but now I'm saying the word grown up hood a lot. And maybe it doesn't work as well. But there is this challenge to grown up hood that I'm seeing in the 21st century. I think you're sharing it with me that it just seems like we're not getting more and more mature. We're getting less, and we're expecting technology to pick up the slack and be more mature for us. And I will tell you exactly how I do it. I do it because I don't know how to get anywhere. That's probably an overstatement, but it's not that far from the truth. Growing up, had no GPSs, needed directions, needed an understanding. Now, because I can offload that all of that onto Google Maps, I never go anywhere without punching in the thing because I justify it because that could give me traffic updates in real time and I can alter my course. But it's also because I don't want to have to think about where to go. I'll just be responsive to whatever Google's telling me to do. Well, that's not exactly the most grown-up behavior. Now, you could make an argument, but well, I'm choosing to offload and occupy my brain with more things, with better, higher things than thinking about directions. But the question is, are you? Am I? No. What I'm filling my brain with are not higher elevated things that are propelling me forward because, look, we have the modern world has afforded us so many more luxuries that we consider now necessities. It's afforded us so many opportunities and options, comforts, conveniences that we now call standards. But has all the material comfort and let's call it experiential abundance, the option to do more things than any of our ancestors ever had, travel more places, see more things. Has all of that made us more confident, more capable, less stressed, less worrisome? You tell me. With all the new opportunities, with all the increased visibility into everybody else's lives around the world, has that made us more open, more connected, like genuinely connected? Has it made us less confused, less divided as people? Again, you tell me. What I believe is there are some dangerous trends where we are asking our technology to be more mature than us. And with AI, this is just exponentially so. We're all talking about the threats to AI that bring AI, but there's no stopping it. Toothpaste is out. It is happening. How are we going to respond to that? But I'm far more interested in the genesis behind it. I loved Seinfeld. If you haven't watched it, Jerry Seinfeld did the commencement address at Duke just a few weeks ago. You can see it on YouTube. And he talks about AI is basically human beings finally admitting, yeah, we can't do this. So let's create something that does it for us. Said it's the opposite of Nike. Nike's just do it. AI is we can't do it. So let's let somebody else. And I think that joke is reflective of a larger reality that it is this constant searching for technology to do what we can't, but it's actually eliminating of so many things that we can, and we're hoping that we're going to use that to elevate the human experience. And believe me, I hope that is the case. But I don't believe the pathway to elevating our human experience is to somehow dumb down our sense of intelligence and maturity and our quest for more genuine knowledge, but more importantly, that wisdom about making decisions. I'm hoping that it actually spurs us to be more courageous, more decisive, that it gives us information so that we can make real courageous decisions and innovations in order to solve human problems and grow humans beyond those. But that takes grown-ups. So with all this conversation about grown-ups, it probably is a good idea for us to just kind of step back and say, what is one? What's the definition of a grown-up? Is a grown-up someone who's older? Not necessarily. And if you've If you've grown out of teenagerhood, you know this. I think one of the biggest shocks of young adulthood is realizing, good God, these people who are older than me don't necessarily know what the hell they're talking about. And that's one message I want to give to young people. It's a message I try to give my own kids, which is just like, look, everyone you meet, teachers, coaches at first, and then fellow people, fellow strugglers, college students, friends, but then bosses, leaders, everyone you meet is full of it. At some level, full of it, including your old man. Especially now that I didn't need to tell them because they knew it experientially. Full of inconsistencies, full of blind spots, full of saying one thing, doing the other, lack of integrity. We're all that way. But the best people are the people who are aware of it. The best of us, which I think means the most grown up of us, are aware that our stuff stinks just as much as anybody else. Aware that we are capable of being as fallible as anybody else. And the very best of us, the very most mature of us, the greatest grown-ups in our world are the ones who not only are unafraid of having those inconsistencies pointed out to us, we actually seek it out. I think of a guy like Ray Dalio, who built an entire company, the largest hedge fund in the world, in an effort to, or using an effort to have every flaw out on the table. Like every employee in that company has basically a baseball card. And on the back of their baseball card are their accomplishments and struggles. Every single one. Everybody knows what everybody's done. And what that has done is level the playing field so that he has created this environment where the best idea wins wherever it comes from. And so we're going to evaluate an idea about what to pursue, and they're the decision to implement it, not based on who said it entirely. It's going to be based on the merits of the idea. So even if the janitor says it, if the idea is better, we'll use it. That takes a humility of being a grown-up. That takes the accountability of being a grown-up. It also takes the recognition of agency. It's up to me. I'm going to make the decisions about me. And maybe that's the best place for us to think about what it means to be a grown-up. How much am I willing to take total responsibility for everything I think, everything I feel, everything I do? How much am I willing to take total responsibility for that? How willing are you? Because on the surface, it's easy to say, well, yeah, I am. And I wish other people would too. Well, after the break, what we're going to talk about is why this is actually so hard to do in reality, taking full responsibility for ourselves. Why it's so rare, why it's so hard to do, but also the magic of all that can happen when we have the courage to do so. So, stay with us. Come right back for the Leader's Pause. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Back to the Leader's Pause. Thank you for staying with me. My name is Hal Runkel. I'm your host. What we do in the Leader's Pause is help leaders like you find calm in the midst of the chaos, gain clarity in all the fog of indecision, and level up. Increase your influence on your own self first, on your life, your decisions second, and then on others in doing so. And that happens when you are courageous enough to make one ridiculously mature decision. And I think it is the hardest decision of adulthood, but it is the one that actually signals the transition to adulthood. And it is this: I'm going to be responsible for me. Sounds simple on the surface, and it's a simple thing to say and repeat, and it's absolutely what something everybody would agree with. Everybody needs to be responsible for themselves around the world. Okay, great. Here's where it gets messy is we don't know what responsibility is. We don't agree what responsibility is. You were told probably growing up you need to be more responsible. Teachers, parents, grandparents, you need to be more responsible. And what did they mean by that? What that usually meant was you need to do what you're told. You need to do what you're supposed to do. You just need to do it. And being responsible means despite what you want to do, you do what you have to do. Is that how you were taught? Is that how we were talked to? Is that what your understanding of responsibility is? And I'm going to tell you, that is not responsibility. And it certainly ain't mature. That is reactivity, which is the opposite of responsibility. Doing what you're told because you were told to do it is not responsibility, because that is not a response. That is a reaction. I'm supposed to follow orders, so I do. I don't think about it, I just do it. Do what you're told. I just do it. I'm a good girl, and I do what I'm supposed to do, and that's being responsible. No, it ain't. You know what's being responsible is taking it, thinking about it, taking the order, thinking about it, thinking about how it impacts yourself, how it impacts others around you, how that order will actually play out, and then deciding for yourself to choose whether or not to follow the order. That's a response, which means it's an ability to make a response if you take the inherent agency in any decision that is there waiting for you. I used to work with the military for years all over the world. I still do a little bit, training in leadership and relationship skills. And their model of command and control, I said it so you're supposed to do it, does not create responsible leaders. It creates reactive followers. And if that's what they want, great, but that actually isn't what they want. At least not what they say they want. What they say they want are leaders capable of making decisions. This means they are capable of evaluating and distilling tons of information, a luxury of the modern world, which some people call a curse, that calls us to sift through and then make the most educated decision we can do. That's what the Army certainly says it wants, is leaders who are capable of making decisions. Well, I will tell you this, as a former parenting expert who got to speak around the world to parents of all ages, nationalities, and races, every parent wants the same thing. I am absolutely convinced every single parent wants the same thing. We want a 25 or 30-year-old who is capable of making good decisions. That's what we want, which means they're responsible. But if we're saying we want them to always make the decisions we want them to make, that's not responsibility. That's reactivity. We want them to be reactive to our superior position above them and not think, just act and do, and then we'll call them responsibility. The reason why we do that is because we feel responsible for them. We feel responsible for their behavior. So it's our job to get them to behave well. And every leader feels this pull. It's my job to get my kids to behave. It's my job to get my employees. It's my job to get my team all on the same line. It's my job to get this one person to perform better. It's my job to get the players on the t-ball team to play together. It's my job to make my spouse happy. It's my job. This is, if you're honest, so much of why you're stressed is because you feel so much of that burden. But here is a wonderfully freeing, inconvenient truth. You ain't responsible for anybody but you. Why? Because you're not capable of making a response for someone else. How could you be? Can you actually take over someone and make a response for them that is from them? No, you cannot. But we think we're supposed to. And then the people that we're supposed to make happy, take responsibility for, make into better people, make into better behavior, make into better choices. We take responsibility for them, and guess what happens? We end up taking responsibility from them. And then we complain that they're not being responsible. How can they be if we've been taking responsibility from them the whole time? Which means it's my job to get them to behave, not their job to get themselves to behave. It's my job. Well, this model of leadership is one of the reasons why we do not have as many grown-ups in the world in charge as we used to, as we want. We don't have as many grown-ups because people have been taking too much responsibility for other people and taking responsibility from them. And then when those people then get elevated into positions of leadership, they don't know how to handle it because they've not been empowered to do so. They haven't been making decisions since they were early. It's one of the reasons why I will still teach some stuff on parenting, because a great parent is the same thing as a great leader. My job is to help you learn to make decisions for yourself so that you can, when you're 25, 30, 35, take full responsibility for your decisions, but no responsibility for anyone else's. That's the hallmark of a grown-up. A grown-up takes full responsibility for her or his thoughts, emotions, responses, no matter what was done to them. That's the hard part. Trauma right now is having its moment, and we are wanting to label the traumatic things that were done to us appropriately. As a former therapist, I get that. As a person who as a kid was not raised in the best ways possible, I get that. But taking responsibility means I'm not a victim. I'm a grown-up. I may have been victimized back then, but that doesn't mean I'm still a victim. That means I'm a survivor, and it's my job as to what I do next. I survived up to this point. Okay, now what? That's grown-up-hood, to invent a term. Is that kind of responsibility. My responsibility is to cast a vision as a leader for my team and help everyone see the behaviors that they each can provide that help us align towards that vision. My job is not to make them do it. Because if I could, why do I need them? And that's not what I want most. What I want most is for them to want to do it on their own, to take full responsibility for their actions. This is a topic for many, many, many more shows. All I'm wanting you to take away is this idea that the 21st century makes it harder to be a grown-up, and yet we've never needed more of them than ever before. Are you willing to be a grown-up? Meaning I take full responsibility. It doesn't matter what my spouse says to me. It's my choice as to how I interpret it. It's my choice to see whether or not I think it's offensive. Doesn't matter what my kids do. It doesn't matter what my employees do. It doesn't matter what anybody does to me. I'm still responsible for how I choose to interpret those and then respond to those. That's being a grown-up. It's hard. It's rare because it's hard. But it's magical when we find it. And what you'll find is every time you have done it in the past, taking full responsibility, not blame anybody else, own up to it, what you've done to it, with that, even if it led to very painful consequences, you still felt taller, stronger, more alive, and more of a grown-up. That's the Leader's Pause. Thank you so much for joining me. Join me in a couple of weeks for another edition. Until then, stay cool.
You have been listening to The Leader's Pause with Hal Runkel, the show that helps leaders like you find calm, get clear, and level up. Tune in every first and third Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio to access your greatest superpower, the ability to pause, think, and decide for yourself. Book a conversation with Hal today. Visit halrunkel.com.